So we were in Revelation 11. We saw that we've gotten up to the point 3.5 years in where the two witnesses have now been killed. They finished their 3.5 year witness, and then this beast, this Antichrist, the other name for him, he overcomes them and he's able to kill them, which is incredible because so far they've had a lot of enemies that they've destroyed no problem. They were assigned till a certain day, and as soon as that day came, their ministry was over and they were killed. Kind of a sad ending for them. Or is it? Is there more to the chapter? But we'll come back to it later. So that was Revelation 11, verse 7. I want to think about a few things here, okay? So these people have these two witnesses. They've been 3.5 years campaigning for Christ. But that means the 7 year tribulation is half over. We're now in the midpoint. So what else has happened thus far in this midpoint? So let's just do a recap here, okay? So in chapter 17, when we get to Revelation chapter 17, we're going to find there is something called the great harlot or the great whore or the great prostitute or whatever you want to call her, right? And it turns out to be this religious system that has emerged during the first half of the tribulation, okay? She is going to be greatly judged and is going to be seen across the world. She's not going to have a good end. She initially functions with the blessing of the Antichrist. He wants her to be successful. She's supported by his government, this false religious system, okay? I'm calling her she because she's called the great harlot in the Bible. She's described as mystery, Babylon the Great, right? So the way that we think of it is a one world super church made up of those who follow the Antichrist and those false believers, those who pretended to be Christians, but were left behind because they were never raptured. They were never part of the bride, right? So these people are left behind, and this new mega super church, whatever you want to call it, mega religious system is left behind and forms this conglomerate called the Great Harlot. And this system sits on many waters, which the Bible describes to us means it affects many nations. It is a worldwide religion. And what does it do? It kills any believers in Christ. It's drunk with the blood of the saints. So this mega world religion is out there murdering anyone who claims to accept Christ during these first 3.5 years. So that's the first part, the bad religious system that's there. The world government, again, under this first half of the tribulation, is divided under 10 kingdoms, 10 kings with 10 kingdoms, and they free willingly give their power to the Antichrist because they think he's going to solve the world's problems, right? But they eventually, when we get to the middle of the tribulation, the Antichrist is going to run into some problems, okay? So the peace that the Antichrist promised the world begins to fall apart, maybe in part due to the witnessing of these two witnesses, right? So the whole world's trying to realize, okay, maybe this guy isn't what he says he is. And he wants to exert his power, his absolute authority over the entire world. So what does he do? He attacks these two witnesses. And we'll soon see how they'll resurrect after he's killed them. But he is finished with Israel. He's had enough of their worship of their God, of their not submitting to his will, to his focus, and to worship of himself. So he ends up breaking his covenant with Israel and plans to take control of the entire planet under his absolute dictatorship. That's his plan. But not everyone's on board with his plan, including the kings that are under him. They aren't happy about it. So in Daniel chapter 11, verse 36 down through 39, it says, "And the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all." He wants to be an absolute authority. "But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them," the 10 kings who are under him, "to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain." Okay, The world is split up under his attempt for absolute rule under 10 kingdoms, and he's going to have them rule over the world. Got it. His 10 kingdom alliance, though, is going to begin to fall apart. So in verse 40 of Daniel 11, down through verse 45, he says, and at the time of the end, the king of the south shall push at him. We have one of his kings turning against him. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. Another king coming against him. With chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. This is a powerful. The king of the north has got a lot of power. He shall enter also into the glorious land. This is the Antichrist going into Israel. And many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of, that thing died. But these shall escape out of his hand, Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. So 3 of the nations that are all within the kingdom of Jordan are not going to be conquered by him. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But now we got another king. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore shall he go forth with great fury to destroy and to utterly make many, to make away many. So now he has the king of the east against him, the king of the north, and the king of the south, right? And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. And yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Okay, so let's break that down just a little bit. So the Antichrist is going to war against some of his own kings. He already has worldwide dominance with the kings submitting their power, but he goes to war against 3 of the kings. So he wants to conquer all of them. He wants absolute authority. So some people think that the king of the north is the Antichrist. I don't think that's what the scripture says here, okay? So I believe he's actually one of the kings that comes against him. So he pushes against the north, he pushes against the south in verse 40, and then down in verse 44, he pushes against the east. The Bible tells us he is successful in killing these 3 kings. He destroys these 3 leaders, and then he opens his invasion into Africa, which takes him across Israel. So in Daniel chapter 7, verse 7 through 8 says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, had great iron teeth, it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. So 3 of the kingdoms were removed. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man. He wasn't just a king, he was an individual, and a mouth speaking great things. And then down in verse 24, it tells you the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and shall subdue 3 kings. So we see the imagery here from Daniel telling us the Antichrist will defeat 3 of the kings that were originally under his power. Okay? So now that he's invaded Israel, he is able to orchestrate the abomination of desolation. So it's bringing us up to the middle of the tribulation. But the kingdom of Jordan, which is Edom, Moab, and Ammon, they are excluded from his authority. He can't conquer them for whatever reason. Now, that's going to be a place of escape, we believe, for Israel, which we're going to talk about later in Revelation, right? But he's going to set up his headquarters in Jerusalem. That's why you see in verse 45 of Daniel 11, he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So between the seas is where he's going to set it, in the holy mountain of God. But the verse ends with saying he shall come to his end. So he is going to be killed, right? He's going to be killed, or at least appear to be killed. I believe he's actually going to die. At least the entire world's going to believe he's dead, right? The Antichrist, right? He's going to see his end when he comes and sets up his headquarters, right? So the same term used for meeting his end is the same term used for Jesus having been killed. So I believe it's a physical death. So during the battle against the kings, he is victorious, but he receives a deadly wound, right? But miraculously, he's resurrected. So Revelation 13:3 says, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. And the deadly wound, it was a wound to death, right? The deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast. So during this time period, we're again at the middle of the tribulation here. Satan has been cast down to earth, right? But we're going to talk more about that in the next chapter, in Revelation 12. So that while on earth there is a war between the Antichrist and the three kings, at least, that were under his power, in heaven there's another war going on between Satan and his angels and Michael and his angels, right? And ultimately, Satan gets kicked out. He no longer has access to heaven, and he can no longer accuse the Christians, the brethren. And heaven rejoices when he's cast out. Now Satan is on earth. He's on earth, and his false Christ, his Antichrist, right, his pseudo-Christ, has miraculously been resurrected. That leads the entire world into believing he's supernatural. They begin to worship the beast. So think about, now some people say, well, maybe he doesn't get killed. We live in an extremely skeptical world, right? We have fake videos, we have doctored news reports, fake pictures. Whatever happens to this guy, everyone's convinced he's dead. So I don't believe it's going to be some, oh, I had a stroke and now I'm better. That can happen to anyone. Something happens that convinces the world he's a dead man and now he's back, right? So miraculously comes back and they begin to worship him as a god. And of course, he killed those 3 out of the 10 that were against him. And ultimately, what happens to the other 7? They submit to his authority. So Daniel 7:24 says that he will subdue the 3 kings. We read that earlier, right? Revelation 17, verse 12 says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Their kingdoms are short-lived, right? These have one mind. They shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Why? Because God told them to. In Revelation 17:17 says, for God put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. So the Antichrist will establish himself as dictator of the entire planet. It's no longer him and then the 10 kings. In the second half, during the Great Tribulation, it's him, right? He rules the show. He doesn't want, this is the other part, he doesn't want to share it with any religious system. He wants to be king. He wants to be God. He doesn't want to share it with anyone. So what does he do to the church that he previously supported? This false church called the Great Harlot or the Great Whore? He wants to wipe them out just like he did the 2 witnesses, just like he's been wanting to do with all the Christians and all the Jews. It says that where are we at? Revelation 17:16 says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. So now all the people who follow this false religious system, who previously he supported, they shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. He turns on those that were worshiping anything but him, even though this false religious system previously had his back. So he's going to institute worship of himself, and we're going to talk about that in Revelation 13. And he's going to be there with the support of a new man on the scene, a new beast called the false prophet. And he's going to require everyone to submit that they worship him and submit to him as their leader. And he's going to say, if you don't worship me, you're dead. And to know that you worship me, you're going to get a mark, my name, or my number. One of the 3. Pick one. That's the only way. Without it, you can do nothing. And you're going to see that's when the abomination of desolation is placed in Jerusalem, because he can't have any pesky Jews believing in anything besides him, right? And that's where we're going to lead to the persecution of the Jews. We've already been persecuting the Christians. And then the Great Tribulation is going to be unleashed, where we see the 7th trumpet leading to the pouring out of the 7 vials or bowls, which do far more damage than anything we've read so far. Any final questions?
So, are they there through the whole?
They're there through the first half of the tribulation, and we're going to see what happens to them shortly. So not in this chapter, but in the next couple chapters. All right. Any other questions? All right.